Welcome back, Linux enthusiast. This is the fifth episode of our Linux series. If you have missed any of our previous episodes, please click on the link above. In this video, we'll be covering user and group management in Linux. To learn more about Linux, you can check out our DevOps course. The link is available below in the description box. So let's start the video without wasting any time. Hi. Let's talk about user and process management now. When I say user management, which means that similarly to Windows machines or any other OS, we create users in the Linux, right? So users and groups are some sort of a thing which Linux uses it, and super user is root that we have already discussed yesterday. We will talk about the normal users and system users. What are the configuration files it has? So, like for example, you can see in the PPT that there are two files. First is etc passwd, another one is etc shadow file. Those are the files which contains the information about the user and their passwords. After that, we will see how to modify or delete a user, and then we will also see how to manage the passwords, how to change the password for a user, and then we'll talk about the group management here. In the group management, there are files which are important, for example, etc group. And to create a group, to delete a group, what is a primary group and secondary group. We'll be discussing all that in this topic. So let's start seeing how to verify and how to add a user. So I'll talk about how to add a user first. First of all, let's check which user we have currently logged in. So we can see that we are logged in with the parallel user. There is a command called whoami that can show you the user that you have currently logged in. Also, there is another command that can also, you can try echo $ and then user. It will also give you the present user which I am currently logged into my Ubuntu OS. All right. So now let's add the user. So there is a command called add user, and sudo we are using as discussed that, to give the special power of root user to the normal user so that it can create a user. Otherwise, by default, a user does not allow to create any new users. So let's say we create a user called StarAgile, and it asks for the sudo password for me for the parallel users in order to enable the user creation. So I have provided it. So what it has done is, if you look at the info, it is trying to add a user called StarAgile. After that, it is selecting a UID and GID from a range of 1000 to 59,999. So where this range come from, we will see that in a bit. After that, it is trying to add a new group called StarAgile, and the group ID is 1005, and then it is trying to add a user StarAgile with the same ID 1005 with the group StarAgile. So whenever any user has to be created, you see the group also has to be created. Without a group, a user cannot exist. So whenever you create a user, a group will automatically being created. Now you must be wondering why this ID is coming 1005. So we'll talk about that in a bit, that there are certain IDs that has been allotted for system users and groups, which is not being usually allotted by default to the users. So whenever any user gets created, it always takes the ID greater than 1000. So here, since there would have been some other users already created in my system, that's why you are seeing the ID starting with 1005. So whatever the free ID is available currently in the system, we will see that the same ID. All right. Then it tries to create a home directory, because without home directory, a user cannot log into a particular shell. Shell means this interface what we see and where we are typing our commands and then getting the output. So without this, there are few files which are important for the user to whenever we log into the user, those files gets executed. So we'll see that in a bit as well, what are the important files and profile files. After that, we will see, so it is saying that it is copying a file from etc scale. Etc scale is the file basically who creates the skeleton of any user. When I say skeleton, which means, see, for anything which you built, it requires a skeleton to be built. So like a human body has a bones, and on top of it it has a muscles and nerves, right? So without bone, muscle cannot be of use. So if you just keep it just the muscles and not the bone, it will not stand and not stick to the each and every muscle and bones, right? So without bones it cannot have a body completely. So similarly for a user, it has to have the skeleton which is being provided by the etc scale file. We will see that what are the contents etc scale usually stores. So before that, let's try to give the password and let's try to set the password for the user StarAgile. So I have set the password. Then it is asking me the full name. So let's say we give StarAgile training. Okay. Room number not required. You can enter. You can enter. You can enter. You can give it blank. Not a problem. And it's trying to verify if the information is correct. So then you can press Y. All right. So now you see it has given us an info message saying that adding new user StarAgile to supplemental extra group users, adding new user StarAgile to group users. So it has successfully added the user. How do you verify it? So there are files that you can check. One is the etc passwd. When you open this file, you see all the users, whatever has been created so far is listed over here. So I'll explain that in a bit, what are the options, what are these columns contains. But let's go to the bottom of the file. So in the bottom, I see there is one more entry which has added after creating the user called StarAgile. Currently, it has a password. So second column is referencing the password of StarAgile, that a password has been set for this. And then the user ID, which is 1005, and we saw the same on the UI as well when we were creating the user. And the GID is 1005. The full name of the user is StarAgile. Since we left out all the remaining columns by pressing enter, that's why you don't see any new entries over here. After that, you see /home/StarAgile, which is nothing but a home directory of StarAgile user. And by default, it takes /bin/bash. So this is nothing but a shell. So when we will be discussing about shell scripting, that time we will talk about what are the types of shells are present and how do you allot those shells. Like for example, bin/sh, bin/bash, there are some zsh, there are a lot many shells which are available. So let's save this file and I'll show you one more file called etc shadow file. So this etc shadow file, currently it's permission denied. So let's use sudo and let's go to the bottom of the file, and we see StarAgile is the user which is created. Now you see this is the long string which is basically telling you the password. How does it save the password? So this is, there are $4 in between these passwords are being stored. So basically this is nothing but the algorithm type what it is trying to choose, and how it is going to encrypt the password of a user. And then there is a random salt value which is being used here in order to generate the password. And then after the salt, which is random numbers mixed with the algorithm that they are trying to encrypt, it generates a hash value. So that hash value is always be a unique, which means no other user will be having the same hash value and will not be able to authenticate some other users. So every password is unique and it's kind of a secure. So if somebody will try to brute force the password attacks also, that is not something. By looking at this value, you cannot reverse or you cannot revert and fetch the actual password of the user, because it is salted and with the random numbers and generated the hash value, which is always a unique. However, there are some online tool you can verify if the password is correct or not. So, and then after that, these are the fields that is basically trying to say that the password is active till 99,999. Then before you log the user, it will be giving a warning for 7 days, and after that the user will be permanently blocked and deleted. So these are the configurations we see in this file. Let me see if I have that file with me to check the password. Yeah, there is a script. Let's try to run this. And what we have to do is, let's first fetch that salt and hash value what it gave us before. So I'm just copying this. Okay. and let me open password check. So this is a script which I've created. This is just to validate if the password somebody is trying to enter is correct or not. We will talk that in detail as well in few other examples when we'll be talking about the shell scripting. So basically it is just verifying the stored hash, whatever the hash that you have stored in the etc shadow file, and it will ask you to enter the password. Once you enter the password, it will generate the same stored hash with the salt value, and then try to generate the similar hash. If the hash matches, that means the password is correct, otherwise the password is wrong. So let's save this file and then let's execute this. So in order to execute any shell script, that we'll be discussing as well in the shell part. So it's a executable binary. So if you look at the it's not a binary, but it's executable file. So if you look at the permission for this, you must see X permission there, because X is something on the file which means executable. Executable means you can treat this as a command. So now let's try to execute this, and then I am entering the password of user StarAgile, which I have set while creating it. So it says okay, crypt command not found, no worries. There must be some other script as well I have. Let me see. This is also the same Python, in the Python format I've created. Just trying to, let's paste our hash, and then let's try to see when we execute this script. Password underscore check dot py. Alright, it's not showing up, no worries. Let's try to execute this, Python 3, and enter the password. Okay, so now it's basically using a crypt module of Python, using which it is basically trying to validate if the password is correct or not. So I have entered the password here, whatever the password I try to set up for a StarAgile user, and you see the response came as a true. True means it's correct password. Let's try to see if I enter some gibberish password, and then it will give me the response that it's a false password. So up to that level of trace backing you can do with the help of crypt modules or some other modules which are openly available. You can use that in order to validate if the password is correct or not. But there is no way basically somebody can tell you just by looking at the hash that what would be the password. But yes, you can validate the password by using shell scripts or Python scripts, or with the ways. So that is one. Let's try to log into that user that we have created. So you can say switch user su command, and then StarAgile. It will ask for the password. Okay, now you see who am I. Currently I am logged in with StarAgile, and you see there is this green over here. This is nothing but a PS thing. We will talk that when we'll see what are the files from which this value comes up. But if just focus at the color currently, so it's green in color for parallel. Similarly, you got the green color for StarAgile as well. Why I want to show this, because if the skeleton was not properly created for the user, you must see this value should not be like usually not in colors, and some shells is missing. So you can check the shell as well, which shell you are currently logged in. So it's saying bin bash, the same shell we saw in the etc passwd file. Okay, now let's try to see what all files have been created for this user when we created it. So I said ls-al because I want to see the hidden and non-hidden both type of files. So for all these files which have been created automatically for StarAgile user, these are all hidden files. So what are these files? Let's talk about it. Let's try to cat bash underscore logout. So this is nothing but a bash executed by bash. What it does is, whenever you log out the shell, at that time of logout, it basically executes this. So this is nothing but a if loop that will be talking in shell scripting. So it's basically trying to check the value. If the value is 1, then you can clear the console. If the value is not 1, then you can just quit it. So something like that. So it's trying to execute whenever any user logs out. Then there is one more important file, which is a profile file. So now this is the file which is what I was talking about, the path basically. If you look at here, so umask is that is commented by default, and if running the bash, so basically it's trying to tell you that include bash src if it is not exist, if it exists. So then it is trying to copy it. If it exists, then just have it up. Then you are basically trying to set the path. So this path is basically being used to store all the binary kind of files and the location where all the binary files are usually stored. So you can check that there is a command called echo $path. So these are the paths which are by default present in my system. So at this location, all the binary executables are present. So this is a default. Whenever any OS is booted or loaded automatically, when we do, this path is being created as well, because it contains the information of the location where the binary files are exist. Similarly for this one, this is a local path that we are assigning. So inside home directory of this user, which is home StarAgile, and then inside it .local and then bin. So these are the, if you keep anything inside inside this directory, and there is no such directory currently, but if you create this and have this binary, so whatever the executable files you will keep it will execute, it will automatically being added as a path. And then it is saying that whatever the $path value is, just append it to the next of it. So you will additionally see the value for StarAgile user added up over here. So yeah, those are the things. We'll talk that in detail as well in the shell scripting. So this is what I wanted to show. There is one more file actually, which is a bash rc. So let's try to get that as well. So you see the aliases, whatever the aliases by default this user is having it. So whenever you execute ll command, it will nothing but execute ls-alf under the hood. Okay. Then there are some aliases for the grep command, which basically by default try to take the color of it as well, because if you see, if you notice, when we ran this command psaux grep StarAgile, this is coming in the color. Why this is coming in the color? Because this command grep command is nothing but using this command grep -- color -auto. So every time to write this command and use it, it's kind of a lengthy, right? So when you feel there is a command which you would want it to be shortened, so the best way to do that is create an alias. And if you create an alias locally on your shell, it will be gone once the system is rebooted. So in order to make it persistent and permanent entry, better to do that for any users bash rc file. So you can just add up an entry here saying that okay, alias grep whatever you would want to, alias or command or any command aliases that you would want to add it, you can just add it here. That's quite kind of easy and permanent as well. Whenever, so why I am saying permanent, because whenever you log into this user, so currently we have logged into StarAgile user, right? So whenever you log into any of the user, these files are being executed. So that's the reason it tries to check what is the content it has it, and then it executes if there is any script, if there is any alias commands and whatever. So it happens under the hood. So user does not get to see that. However, all these things would have already been set for this user because it was written in the bash rc file. And this is the ps1 I was talking about. So this is the ps1 you see here. Let me just copy it and then print it here. So you see this is a ps1. This is nothing but this, whatever the value and how do you want to change it. So if you want to just change it, you can just change it. So let's try to make some changes and see. Let me just go to bash rc. Okay, let's go to this file. Let's search ps1. Okay. So it's saying that color prompt. If there is a color prompt, then this PS. If there is no color prompt, then this PS. Why there is a difference? See, it's all about when it will come in the color prompt, because we have created the skeleton. We have copied the files from etc scale into this home directory. That's why it is always been color. Okay, because we have created that skeleton. So skeleton is nothing but a proper kind of all the important and all whatever the user should supposed to have it is having everything. So if it is created without skeleton copied file, then the PS1 value would look like. So let's do one thing. Let's try to edit this, and I'll just comment this so that it does not execute, and we will set up our own, So let's see what we do. So if I do this, I'll change everything. I will just say what I want is that StarAgile. Okay, and I've saved it. Let's log out to the user and then log in back. Okay, now you see it's taking time to load the shell because I've made it some changes. So it's saying authentication failure. Let me just try to see if the password was correct. So something would have broken actually. So let's try to make the changes, or let me just see once more. Okay, because my caps lock one was on, so that's why it was not typing the correct password. Now you see the shell. How does it look like? It's just a dollar. It does not have any value like what it was showing up before. Why? Because we have made the changes in this file, and it's not colorful also. So that is what it tells. If you want to type it anything here, let's say I said StarAgile training or something, let's say, let's see if it executes the date command and then dollar. Let's see if it does. So what I'll do is switch, let's execute. Okay, see, now it's showing up a little different because I've added an entry called StarAgile_training, and then date, it is executing the date command, and after that dollar. So these are the things you can make a change. I'm just disabling this change so that it should have the default for now, and let's execute and then again. Okay, see, now it's back to normal what it was supposed to. So these are the files. Now you must be thinking that how does this files created and has come up. So these are the two files, new files, which have just now created. Why? Because since this user has performed certain commands on his shell, that's why those history has been present inside bash_history. See, the history is just a short history. So if you look at this file bash_history, if you try to cat it also, sorry, bash history. So you see the history is coming up from here. If somebody wants to clean the history, you can do history -c, that will clean the history, and after that when you execute history, there will nothing be showing up. And but let me just see, bash history, it still shows up that history to you. It does not clean it. So history -c basically just to cleans the local history which is there on the shell. But if you want permanently to delete all the histories that you have done so far, you can just clear this file and then it will remove the history. But make sure that apart from deleting the history as well, your logs will be available in the systems. There are some other files which stores the information about the user, as well as if admin wants to see that you have done something, can check the logs for various applications that something is broken. So you can, you have to remove the traces from a lot of places. It's not just the history. So, but this is just to show the example that that's how you can delete the bash history files and see things. Now let's take a look at etc scale. We have been talking about that skeleton, and just do this. See, so this is etc scale file contains the skeleton of these important 3 files. So this always be copied over from this directory to the user's home directory in order to make sure that the user has a proper shell, proper profile, so that user can do actions whatever it would want to do, usually with the certain restrictions whatever a default user gets it. So that is about user add. After that we will try to delete the user. So how can you do that? Let's say sudo, there is a command called del user, and then you can delete the user. StarAgile. Okay, it's asking password for the parallel user, and see, it has removed the cron tab. We'll be talking about in the process management and how to create the automated jobs, and then it is removing the StarAgile user as well. So now if you try to log into StarAgile, it says user StarAgile does not exist and the user entry does not contain all the required fields. What happens, let's say we saw the etc passwd and etc shadow file also created the entry for StarAgile. Let's check where is that entry, does this entry still present or not. Okay, so etc passwd, I'll just go to the bottom of it and see I am at the bottom. Okay, currently there are 56 lines. There is we'll talk about that in a bit. 56 lines, and the last line is this one, which after that there is no further entry for StarAgile. Similarly for etc shadow as well, you see that the last entry is for the SFTP user, not for the StarAgile. So whenever we delete the user with the command of del user, it automatically deletes all the respective entries for the user, so there is no trace of the user which is present in the system. Okay, now there are options in the del user command, so let's check those things. The options I was talking about, remove remove. So there are few options like remove all files. So you want to remove all the files which contains for the user, you can use this option. Otherwise you can let it be like this. So it's your choice. Some people try to execute this command as well, like whenever del user will be executed, they have created an alias of del user equals to del user remove home, which means it will automatically delete the home directory as well for the user. Okay, but let's see if the user itself is deleted now, so but the home directory is still present, but it does not have a permission. Let me try to see if sudo has it. Yeah, see, the user was deleted, though we see here the removing the user, but user's home directory was not deleted. Why? Because by default it does not delete. So if you would want it to be delete, so you can use the command del user, but with that option that we saw, remove home. So let's try that one as well. We will create another user and then this time we will remove. Okay, let's try to create the same user what we created and see what happens. Does it take the home directory of the previously same user which we deleted, or it creates a new one? Let's try to verify that. Okay, see, it says the home directory, there is a warning, not an error. The warning says the home directory for /home/StarAgile already exists, not touching this directory, which means it is not going to copy again from the skeleton file to the home directory, because the home directory was already present for the user. So this was not a complete trace removed after using just the del user command, but it is creating a new, selecting the new UID because those entries were removed. Okay, so I'm just giving the password, full name, I'll just skip this time. Okay, and let's see, the user is there. Okay, I've logged in. Perfect. Okay, now let's try to delete the user again. Sudo del user remove home and then StarAgile. Okay, see, this time it is removing files, looking for the files in backup and remove, cron tab and user. So these are the files. This is the additional info message we are getting this time, which was not there previously, which was So previously we were seeing only these two info messages were displayed, but now there are three info messages are displayed. One of it says that removing this file as well. So now let's try to verify if the files for StarAgile present or not. Okay. See, I am pressing the tab, but I don't see anything. Otherwise, it would have come. There is no such directory of file, which means it has removed the necessary files, the home directory for the user as well. So that's how the full cleanup for Dell user. Now, I was talking about that, you know, the IDs which is present in etc passwd file. Okay, so this is the ID I was talking about. How does these IDs being created? So just keep a note of it. ID 0 will always be allotted for user root, which is a super user of this OS. Okay, every Linux system has the same hierarchy in this sense that the 0 ID will be allotted to the root user. It will by default assigned to root. None other user can have an ID called 0. It's preliminary assigned and associated with the root user. Okay, first thing. After that, ID from 1 to 999. Those are the IDs which are being allotted to the system users. When I say system users, what I mean is all the application softwares, let's say for example Apache server, web servers, or DNS mask, or DHCP, or whatever the service that you are going to deploy on this machine, it automatically creates the daemon user for those, which means those are the users, system users will be applicable to perform actions for respective applications. For example, let's see if I have deployed Apache here. I have not, no worries. Let's see DNS. Yeah, so DNS mask is currently running on this machine, which has already created a user DNS mask for it, and you see the ID of it was 999. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that anything which is till 999 from starting from 1, those are the system user IDs, which also cannot be allotted by default to any of the users when you create it. So the normal user always have an ID starting from 1000, and then you see it will keep on taking whatever the ID after that you are going to assign. So here after user Himanshu 1, I set up as DHCP as well. So the DHCP is a system user because it's a DHCP service which basically allots the IP address to the machines, and it has ID within that range of 1 to 999, that is 125. Okay. Yeah, so that is fixed. So you want to check and maximum ID. If somebody has a question, what is the maximum ID that a user can get it? So there is a limit actually, depend on the system, and the system 32 and 64 bits as well. It varies till 60,000. Some systems, someone has 65,000. So that configuration stores in etc login defs. So this file contains maximum password days. What is the maximum password days you would want to set? So what does it mean is that once you set the password for any user, it will be eligible or active for these many number of days. 999. So for close to 1 lakh days it will store. After that, minimum days is 0, and then warning age is 7. So we saw that in etc shadow file and passwd file, these entries were shown. So this entry has come up from login.devs file. So this contains the entry for umask also. There are some system configurations which contains the entry for these. What is the default path? Okay, what is the sub path? So we saw the path, how this path was defined. It read this login.devs file. So whenever a system OS boot, automatically this file is also being read, and then set up the configuration before itself users see the shell, and or just load the desktop and shell and whatever, right? So before that itself everything is pretty set. If you want to do anything or make any changes or modifications so that while booting itself the changes are applied, you can change this as well. But the better thing, I said that for the local home directory there are files bash/rc and profile, so just go ahead and change it. So this is just used for some high level of settings. for users and stuff. So what I was talking about, UID actually. So you see this, for this system, the minimum user ID is 1000. So any normal user, whatever will be created, it has to start with the 1000, and maximum ID it can get it up to 60,000. This limit manually you can change in this file, and then there might be a user specifically you can assign the ID to 60,001. Okay, beyond 60,000 also that you can change. So this is customizable. This is what the Linux is. You know, we discussed earlier that Linux is open source, Linux is so customizable and it's very useful for the user. This is what I meant, that all these settings you can change it. In Windows you cannot do all these things. You know, you cannot change when the password will be expiring, and when the UID, how to change the UIDs and shells and stuff. So that is kind of very complicated and not so easy. But in Linux, everything is a file. You open the file, you make the changes, you make the configuration things. So now let's try to do one thing. Let's use the awk command that we have already discussed. Awk hyphen capital F. Capital F is used to set the delimiter, what delimiter a file contains. From that you want to fetch some data. So what I would want is, I want the third column which is greater than 1000, and the third column less than 65,000 and 534. Okay, then I would want to print $1 from which file, /etc/passwd. So what I'm trying to do is here, read this file etc passwd. From this file I want only to print the first column. So the first column of this file is the username. Okay, but what is the condition that I'm putting is, the condition is the third column, which is nothing but a user ID, should be greater than 1000 or 1000 and less than 65,534. Only those users, give me only those user list where this condition is matching, where the user ID is 1000 or more than that but less than 65,534. Okay, and this file we have seen already that it contains colon as a delimiter. I'll just show it again so that we don't get confused. Okay, see, you see every column has a delimiter which is colon. Okay, every column. So we have to specify that column is a delimiter while using this awk command. That's how the awk command parameter has to be passed on. Okay, so now let's copy this and paste it. Okay, so this is giving me only the usernames whose ID is 1000 or more than that but less than 65,000. What if I want to fetch the UID also along with this? So I'll do a little slight modification here in this. I'll say and I want a comma, you know, after this comma, and then give me the ID. Okay, and then $3. Okay, see, so here you can make changes. Whatever the values you would want to fetch, you can fetch it, keep on adding, and then further, let's say I want GID also, you know, group ID. So I'll say again comma. So why am I adding this double quote comma? Because it's a string. That's how you have to pass it in the awk command print statement. So anything, anything, not just the comma. Let's say I want to say hyphen. Okay, and then $4. See, this has comma because $1 and $3 has comma as a separator, but I wanted specifically to have hyphen as a separator between $3 and $4. That's why I chose hyphen. It just showed me the hyphen. So this is the username, this is a UID, and this is GID. Okay, all right, so this is there. After that, let's try to add a user to the group. So the file, I'll show the groups actually, vim etc and groups. There is a file which contains the information about a group. So whenever any user creates, the group also creates with the same name by default. See, for root group has created. If we go to the bottom, for SFTP user, SFTP group has created, and then it has ID called 1004. So let's do one more thing. Let's try to add sudo add user StarAgile. Okay, password perfect. ठीक है, let's see this etc group file and go to the bottom, and we see StarAgile group was also created along with StarAgile user, which has an ID called 1005. The same ID you saw inside etc passwd. For StarAgile, group ID is 1005. Okay, so what are these groups actually? That ID for StarAgile is of, this is a primary group ID. Okay, which means if you want to know what is a primary group of this user, you should check this ID and then validate the ID inside this and try to find. So 1005 is the ID of StarAgile group. So StarAgile user has a primary group called StarAgile. So why am I saying this? Whenever we we create anything, directory or file, you saw that let's say I created a test directory, and we have seen that automatically the user ownership and the group ownership was created. So this thing we discussed in the permission session, right? So what is this this is this group. So this group is nothing but the primary group of StarAgile user. So now it makes the concept clear that okay, must be thinking about what is a primary group and secondary group. So there are two types of group. One is a primary group, one is a secondary group. By default, whenever any user gets created, it also has a primary group associated to the user. Okay, that primary group also gets created, mostly with the same ID of what UIDs, what GIDs, right? So the primary group information you can see in the etc group file. For secondary group information also you can see in the etc group file. I'll show that which column contains that information. But let's review the permission and try to link up what we discussed, right? So in permission we discussed that this permission was for the ownership of that directory or file for user ownership, which was RWX, read, write, execute. And this was the privileges. Second one was for the group. So this group was nothing but a primary group, which is a StarAgile in this case. Okay, let's do this now. Let's try to add the secondary. How do you see that secondary group? So etc group file, let's go to the bottom. See this last column which is currently empty, that column is for the users. Okay, this is not a group column, this is a user column. Here you have to basically add the users, what all users you would want the secondary group to be set as a StarAgile. So if I add any user here, so let's say for example we see say groups, there is another user, let's say Himanshu1. Okay, so Himanshu1 has a Himanshu1 only, that is the only group, it does not have any secondary group. Okay, so now how do you add that actually? So there are two options. Either you can just go to that file and then add it in the etc group file. Okay, or you can use this command sudo usermod to modify the user and then add a group which is a secondary group StarAgile. For which user? Himanshu1. Okay, so now let's see what this command did. So if you open etc group file and you go to StarAgile group, you see Himanshu1 entry which was not there earlier, but this is present now. So that means is for user Himanshu1 there are two groups. One is Himanshu1 itself, that is the primary group. And how do we validate that? We will check in the shadow file and passwd file, and the passwd file contains the ID. That ID is for the Himanshu1. And here in this file we see for Himanshu1, which is added in the fourth column, has a group which is called StarAgile. So for Himanshu1, secondary group is a StarAgile group. So that's how you can add the groups. After that you can delete the group as well. Let's say I create a random group without creating any user. So what I can do is I can just do sudo add group and let's say random. Okay, so what it does is it selects the GID which is currently available. Always choose from the 1000 because that's how we have defined in login.devs file, that any normal user and group has the ID starting with 1000 and there's a limit, right, which is defined in our system. So it chose the ID which was free, that is 1006. And if you look at here, etc group file, so random group was created. If you would want to add, associate the user, sudo user mode -a capital G random for StarAgile. So you see, for StarAgile user, there is a secondary group called random, but there is no user called random. There is just a group, and the group is associated with the user as a secondary group. Okay, so that is there. After that, there are commands to lock the user as well. So you can lock it using user mode -L and then the username, let's say Himanshu1. So this is just to lock it. When the password will expire, the lock-in time is 7 days, and then it will be locked. After that, it will delete. So those are the settings that you can change. Unlock, you can use the same command, user mod -u and then username. So this is how you can unlock the user. Okay. After that, we will see how to delete a group. So let's try to delete a group. Same command del group and then random what we created. Okay, it is removing the random. Let's see what happens to the entry that we create, that we saw for StarAgile. We associated a group called random, right? So there is no such entry right now, which was there for random before, right? Because we have deleted this group as well. If you would want to see the ID of any user, you can use command ID. It will tell you just the ID of the user and GID and group ID, what all groups it is part of it, and then it will explain you everything. So here you see that Himanshu1 has 3 IDs actually. One is the system users, and then one this group 1002. This is a primary group for Himanshu user, and this is a secondary group, StarAgile. How do I say this secondary group? Because when I see in the group file, StarAgile 1005, Himanshu1 is added there. So let's look at where all Himanshu1 is there. So Himanshu1 is there with the users group as well. That's why this user entry was showing up. So this is the default group which automatically gets created whenever you create any user in the Ubuntu system, this one. So that's why you see 3. So this one is a primary group and this one the secondary group. So now the question comes in, how many primary and secondary group a user can have? A user can only have one primary group, but it can have multiple secondary groups. So primary group, why it can only have one primary group? There is a reason being that whenever you create any file or a directory by the user, the group ownership assigns it to the primary group. So it's always be the single primary group. It cannot be multiple. So that's the reason primary group can be single, but the secondary group can be multiple for any users. Okay. Now let's see how do we change the password for the user. Or you want to see, let's say there is a command that you can use to see the status of a user. So this command basically give you some rough idea of basically that passability file, telling that, oh, this user Himanshu1 has a password set and this was the time when it was created, and then for how long the password or this user is active, and then this is the lock period, and then -1 is currently the password will never expire, but if you set that, change the setting, then it will work accordingly. So if you don't want to read that passability file, but with the shortcut of something, you can just fetch a single user entry. So you can use passability -s and then get the results. So you don't have to remember always what are these options mean. You can always refer the man command, which is a manual, and yourself can read this, right? So if you see the -s option, so it says it clarifies over here. Let's say -S, any other entries? Yeah. So -S with the passability command stands for status, which means display the account status information. The status information consists of 7 fields, and it tells you about all these values and definitions and stuff, right? So you don't have to always remember this. You can take a reference of man file, that there is no problem about it, and nobody will judge you for that as well, that you are referring this, because nobody can remember all the commands and all the options in one go, right? So it always be based on your use case. So whenever you go and use it, you can just refer the man command, and then later you can just make the changes. Yeah. So there was one more command actually before, which we used to use user add, but that command specifically was an old command. And for copy the scale, you have to always modify that copy the scale file. Otherwise, that command never by default copy it. So I'll just show it once. Let's say I'm creating a user called test1, and see, it did not give me anything about first name, last name, password or shell, or did not copy anything from skeleton as well. See, if I just enter this, so sorry, oh, I chose this sudo switch user masterability sudo test1. See, if I look at who am I, it's a test1, but you don't see any files, nothing is there. It's all permission denied, which means it's of no use after using user add command. This was the previous command, but now the refined command is the add user. However, with user add also you can set up the same profile. You just have to basically copy skeleton inside whatever is there inside this, and then to the home directory of test1. That is one thing you have to do. After that, you have to modify the shell as well. So that you could have done while creating this user add -m -shell bin bash, and then user1, so that it assigns a shell bin bash, which is better than shell sh. So these are the modifications that you have to change actually. And you have to change the ownership also for that user home directory. So these are some additional stuff that we used to do before whenever we used to create a user add, but now with the help of add user command, all these steps are no longer needed. So it's always preferable to create it via add user. You can just do it like this. If you would want to add the specific user to the group, primary group, so you can create sudo, because see, by default, whenever we create a user, the primary group also is created with the same name. But what I want is, I don't want same name to be created. I want a user and set the primary group to someone which is already present. So let's say I say use sudo add user. I am creating add user, and which group in group -- in group, I want to assign this user in StarAgile group. Okay, and what is the username I am trying to create? S2. Okay, so now you see, the difference here, that StarAgile group was taken automatically for this user test2, which means the StarAgile group has become the primary group of this. Why I say this, you can just verify as well in the etc group file, and you go to the bottom. See, test1 was created, that is fine, but StarAgile was so test2, there is no test2 was created, which means there is no primary group for test2 also is created. So a StarAgile group itself has become the primary group of it. So how do I say this? Let's try to log into the test2. We can confirm it. Let's create a directory test, and let's read the permission of test. So you see, for dot, which is a present directory, the group ownership is StarAgile. Otherwise, if you don't assign any group before while creating the user, you always see the group ownership is automatically being assigned with the same name, the new group which is created as a primary group. So that is how you can basically change things. There is one more command, group's username, let's say test2. So this will tell you, okay, test2 has StarAgile and users. This is part of only two groups. One is a primary and another one is a secondary group. Okay. After that, Yeah, so that's about actually, you can delete the group, you can add the group, you can see the ID for the user, and you can modify things. So all these options you can do with the help of these commands that we have seen in this topic.
If you want to learn Linux and get certified from IBM, click on this link given below in the description. That's a wrap for this chapter. I'll meet you in the next episode of this Linux series.